and design geek. And so the book was in great condition. It's got a beautiful dust jacket. And then I picked it up and it didn't weigh anything. And I opened it up and the inside had been carved out and had been turned into a book safe. So there I was with a beautiful looking book that I actually wanted to read. And there was nothing but a big hole cut in the middle of it.
Well, for those of you who are seeing what's behind me, almost everything on that bottom shelf right there is not a book safe. It's a ceramic liquor bottle that looks like a leather-bound book. I see that it is 2:30, and welcome. We are here in the Rare Book Cafe. I'm Steve the Bookman Eisenstein in the cafe's Miami Beach branch, and with me is my co-hosts, Lin Thompson in North Carolina, and Thorne Donnelley in West Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We're going to be joined later today with Lee Irby, noted author. Kara Accettola is also going to be with us today, and we are also going to be talking about AB 1570. It's the bill that just won't go away. We hope you're all enjoying our presentations of the Rare Book Cafe. The Rare Book Cafe is brought to you by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. Next year will be 37 years. We hope you mark the dates down on the calendar. Guys, what's going on?
Well, it's good to see Thorne back. I didn't think we would see you this weekend. Did graduation go well?
Graduation went well. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see my now graduated from Harvard Business School daughter and with a bunch of her friends. It was raining sideways. There was 900 graduates, 19,000 undergraduates, 900 Harvard Business School graduates, and it was quite interesting. Each one was marched across the lawn. They got their diploma, and the parents stood up, clapped, and left. And my daughter was number 225. Her boyfriend was number 750 or something like that. She did not even stay to see her boyfriend. It was raining so hard. We were all soaked, but I'm very proud of her. And she's already in New York in her new apartment, going to Italy on Monday and starting her new job, I think, the following week.
Well, I was about to ask which section of the universe has she been assigned to run as a Harvard Business School graduate?
Part of her new job is possibly opening her firm's, I won't mention the firm because I don't know if it's public knowledge, but she may be opening their London office. So if they get such a thing. So, but that's a year or two down the road. So in the meantime, my little girl is all grown up. So
congratulations.
But I do have a retirement. I have a retirement plan. It's called a Harvard Business School graduate. I'm looking forward to the yacht that I so richly deserve. So
just keep her out of the rare book business. She'll be successful.
No, but she could go to the rare book stores for Daddy and buy things that he likes.
True. As they say, would you want your no? But I see we have Lee Irby on today. Lindsay, a little background on Lee.
Well, Lee is a professor of history at Eckerd College there in Florida. He's published, I think, 3 novels in the past, but he has a new one out called Unreliable with Random House, Penguin, Putnam, I believe. I lose track now. They've all become part of one big conglomeration.
It's Doubleday.
Apparently, it's doing gangbuster sales, and rather than go on about it, I'm going to say hi, Lee.
Hi,
Lee.
Thanks for having me back on the show. I think this is appearance number 3 for me. So,
and remember, Doubleday must state first edition.
Yeah, Doubleday is the publisher. I have many first editions in my office right here. I don't know that sales are gangbusters. I'm glad to hear that. That makes me very happy. Maybe my agent will be happy.
Well, it
Lee,
seems...
let me ask. Go ahead, Lindsay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say...
No, you go ahead. You first.
Getting good reviews everywhere.
Oh, thank you. The reviews have been very... that's really what you live for people that love books and love reading. If they appreciate it, then that's enough reward for me. Because, sales, you can't control that. And anyway, it's most of the books that sell a lot, with very few exceptions, are not any good. But there are exceptions, though. So let's don't say that. I mean, All the Light We Cannot See, I think, is a brilliant book, and it sold a lot of copies. So it gives me hope.
Lee, have you ever looked up your books on a site like ABAA, the ones that are out of print, and have you got any comments on anything you've ever seen like that?
I mean, I noticed long ago for my first books that came out about 11, 12 years ago that they started showing up on Amazon for 1 cent. And it was hurtful. Okay, I have to admit that for some bookseller to price it at 1 penny, that got to me. But then I was talking to Ray at Haslam's, and he told me that those places are just trying to mine your data. So I don't know. Like I've seen, if you go on Amazon, a first edition of 7,000 Clams, my first book, it could be from 1 cent to several $100s if it's signed, which I know is a nice segue into the other issue we're having about signed books. But it is remarkable the price differences you'll see on Amazon for the first book.
Yeah, I was curious how you feel about that, and I didn't mean Amazon. I'm starting to learn.
Right, but I haven't, like, say to go, like, I don't even know that my book yet is in, I don't know that it would be, like, where it would be. I haven't really looked too much. I know that, like, Strand Books has some, but they just basically take in all those advanced readers' copies and then sell them. I haven't really looked. I'm in the here and now with Unreliable to see if it's selling, and that's hard to determine. But yeah, the older books, I would hope that they would prove to be valuable. I have no clue.
Well, this is something that. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Have you had a chance to look at Amazon charts, their new rival to the New York Times bestseller list?
I have not. I mean, that's too depressing. I haven't even seen what's selling right now. I'm hesitant to look. I would imagine it's Paula Hawkins, maybe Dennis Lehane. I would hope it's Dennis. I know he's a good writer.
They're folding in a lot of ebook data as well. They say that their flavor will be not only what people are buying, but what they're actually reading. And because now they can keep up with how much of books you read on your e-reader.
Yeah, people. I want people to buy my book. They don't necessarily have to read it. No, I'm kidding. It's very gratifying. I think a lot of people are reading this book. I'm having incredible conversations with all my friends who I don't know that they read 7,000 Clams. I know they didn't read the Up and Up because it only sold 2,000 copies. But for this book, people are reading it because I run into people that say I just finished it or I'm reading it. Last night I spent an hour talking about it with this couple, really good friends of mine, and they were really transfixed by the book, and I could tell that they really had enjoyed it and read it, and it was a really meaningful night of let's talk about my book, and it was great. I mean, that's what authors dream of that. You toil for years, and then you get to have this time where you can talk about something that you put so much into, and then it kind of goes away again, which is absolutely fine for that to happen as well. But I'm enjoying this moment in the sun because there's a lot of moments where you just sit here alone working, and then this is the icing on the cake, as they say, if I can drop in a cliche.
Are you Forest proper? The sun just came out in Soggy, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe. We're all in Florida, and it's gorgeous here.
It is. I was paddleboarding today and saw sharks and dolphins and stingrays. Just another day in Florida where you go out and look for the things that can kill you. And there are multiple things that can kill you. And that's not even counting the people that I look at suspiciously every single day of my life living here. It keeps you on your toes. Only the strong survive, Florida. As you
well, those who walk around.
Just as a reminder for folks who may not have seen you the last time you were here, when the book was coming out, what is Unreliable about?
Unreliable is narrated by a very sad college professor named Edwin Stith, who is quite lonely and divorced, and he's going home to Richmond to his mother's wedding, and he claims he's on a killing spree. That's very doubtful. In fact, much of what he says is very highly unreliable. He definitely seems to have gotten himself involved sexually with an undergraduate and crossed the line there, and so a lot of things kind of ensue over the 3 days of the book as Edwin tries to negotiate being back at home and his mother's new family, and so I've been involved in it. I've been really getting back into it because I'm writing a screenplay for it right now, which is really interesting. So I'm all in this story once again. I'm all back in it.
Lee, I was talking with an author earlier today, and we were talking about screenplays and script writing.
Right.
One of the things that I found interesting, and I solicit your take on this, especially to young writers that are listening to the program now. What I learned was that if you have a script that might be competing with somebody that's doing a Hollywood movie,
right,
they might offer you a lump sum of cash just to put your script on the shelves.
Oh,
because
I don't doubt that for a second. They throw around options. I mean, that's what we're all hoping for, is to get the option, 25, 30 grand, something like that. And then with a very unlikely prospect that you would make 10 times that if they ever made it into a film. So yeah, they'll option everything that moves, especially if I know that happens. You know how there's so many screenwriters in LA, they make good money and they don't see a single thing produced ever. But they may option several things a year and they make a living.
You know what?
Would you option things?
You know what John Le Carre said about the experience of having his books made into novels?
What did he say?
He said it was like handing over his prize bull and being given back a jar of bouillon cubes.
I can imagine that it is. And, if I didn't have children that needed to go to college, I would probably never even consider it. But I do have to. I'm trying to. If it's worth money, I'm interested to hear what if it's worth any money. It may not be, but I do know I've been told by people that you should go ahead and adapt it yourself if you can. And I enjoy writing plays and screenplays. I like to mix things up. I don't like just to stay in the same place all the time mentally. And I do love the story, and I love Edwin. And so to go back and tell the story again is very fun for me. And plus, maybe it will, maybe I will get another 30 grand or something, which is, would help put the kids through college. So, and no one else knows the book better than I do. So if I can help shape it at all, I'm all for that. And who knows, I might write a play. I write plays all the time. So this is not a labor of, this is not laborious for me. I do enjoy it. And it's a lot easier than writing novels. Oh my God. I wish somebody would pay me to do this forever, because you can write 2,000, 3,000 words. It's like 40 pages. It's really, really interesting. I'm just like hacking off like huge swaths of my story. Like, oh, that's not needed. So it's fun.
Your take to young writers, if they were approached with an option, would be sell and see if you can protect yourself on the other side?
I would say adapt it yourself. That film Room, which was a fantastic movie that was based on, I forget the author's name, but she wrote the screenplay, and I think she won an Academy Award for Best Adaptation of her own book. And it's a brilliant film. It was the same year that the movie about the Catholic priest won the Oscar. But that was about the kid. The Room was about the kidnapping of the little boy, and that kind of the Casey Dugard story. But the author. So my advice would be, if you have a book that you think could become a movie, then you should adapt it yourself, because if they buy the screen rights to your book, they have to pay you about $30,000 if they want to read the script that you wrote. They have to pay you to see the script. They don't get to see it for free. So they'll pay you the option, and then they'll pay you to read the screenplay that you wrote. So I think that if you can do it, do it. And the fact is, with screenwriting software like Fire.
Well, it looks like Lee is frozen up there. So while he sorts that out with Alan, maybe we can bring in Kara. And I may step out for a moment to go see if Brad Johnson is looking for a parking space, because we're getting to the time when he's supposed to be joining us, and we're keen to get everyone in to talk about AB 1570 and AB 228 and lots of other related things. So, hi, Kara, y'all take over.
Hi. Yeah, I guess,
Okay.
Brad, you know how parking is in California? Or wait, how parking is in Florida? Wait, or maybe North Carolina? Virtual parking.
Yeah, valet.
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 Exactly.
Tara, while we're waiting for Brad to come in, I know that you are planning something. Do you have a date for a launch?
Well, actually, you're talking about the show?
Yes, I was trying to tiptoe around the tulips here.
Yeah, there's so many other projects that I'm going to try and dive into. Actually, you know what? I did a tiny little one, I think last week, and I had audio issues, so it's out there, but I didn't publish it. So I think I'm going to go for it again tonight, even though it's Memorial Day weekend. Why not? I'm really proud of myself. I used Canva, and I actually made a nice little graphic for Book Tribe. So I actually have a little professional looking show card. So I'm going to start saying 7 p.m. weekends and maybe weekdays, almost any night of the week at 7 p.m. you might find us on. And that's the Book Tribe with Kara Accettola, a.k.a. Little Sage, who's also known, her film noir name is the Armchair Antiquarian.
I love it. I just got a great rolls right off your tongue.
You never know. The Armchair Antiquarian could be like the next Sherlock Holmes. Think about it. She's solving biblio mysteries, but does anyone really know who she is? Oh, crap. Now they do.
Well, just deny it. Claim it's an imposter.
Right? Exactly.
Well,
When was the first biblio?
It's time to shuffle the mix a little bit. Brad Johnson has dropped by to see us. He is a man with many hats on. He is a member of the Board of Governors of the Association of Antiquarian Booksellers of America. He's on its Government Affairs Committee, and he's also the author of a petition opposing AB 1570, the law that we've been talking about since last fall here on the program and also on Steve's radio show. So welcome, Brad. Thank you for coming by.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what's going on with the effort to amend 1570 into something that looks more human?
We've made a lot of strides in the last several weeks, and I'm pleased to report that our bill, AB 228, passed the state assembly yesterday. Yes, so it was on the consent calendar. So we're about halfway home now. We now get to take it over to the Senate. Same process. We'll be meeting with 2 different committees, and that'll go to a floor vote. We're anticipating that we shouldn't hit any more bumps in the road, and that we're well on our way. But you never can tell with all things political. But we're enthusiastic and optimistic at this point that our bill will pass, which will go a long way to amend many of the draconian measures that AB 1570 has forced upon us.
So would it jinx things if you told us what the best features are of the new bill?
Well, there's a lot of things that help. It redefines what an autograph collectible is and what is subject to the law. This AB 1570 was based on an existing sports memorabilia law here in California, which came about from an FBI sting in the 90s called Operation Bullpen. And it exposed a lot of fraud in the sports memorabilia market. And so the original sports collectible law was meant to address that. And then this unfortunate AB 1570 was just a legislator casting their net in the sea, and unfortunately dragging us all in with it. So this AB 228 redefines collectibles subject to the law as being either sports or entertainment related. It raises the threshold for it being subject to law from $4.99 up to $50. It eliminates the need for issuing a certificate of authenticity, but instead there's an express warranty mandated by the law, including a 3-day grace period in which a customer can return an autographed item, no questions asked, which it's not a big deal for those of us who are members of the ABAA. We stand by our material, and it's not a really good business to make customers unhappy. And finally, the original AB 1570 had a lot of penalties involved in it. Simply not issuing a COA or forgetting to issue a COA could have made a seller subject to a penalty of up to 10 times what the sales price of the item was. This strips that all away, and the penalties are dramatically reduced. There's no penalty for not issuing a COA because you don't have to anymore, and it puts a lot of the power into the hands of the judge if this ever was litigated. And the penalties are now up to $1,000 for sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. For failure to provide an express warranty, the penalty is up to $5,000. Now, if you knowingly and willfully committed fraud, which is a really high legal threshold, then the penalty is up to $5,000. But for the vast majority of booksellers, this is welcome relief, and it will go back to being, by and large, how it was December 31st, 2016.
I want to dive into a little bit an interesting little spat that has erupted in the last week between ABAA and Mr. Petruccelli of Book Passage in Marin County. We had his lawyer from Pacific Legal Foundation on the show last week to tell us about how they have filed suit in federal court to try and strike down AB 1570. And since then, the internets have been alight with an email from a number of members of your leadership accusing Petruccelli of various things, including miscomprehension, misunderstanding of legislative efforts, simplistic analysis, ignorance of AB 228, and giving the legislature cause to have bad faith over a suit brought by those sponsoring the legislation. Well, that seems a little over the top, doesn't it, given that ABA or Mr. Petruccelli is not a sponsor of the legislation, and ABAA is not a party to the lawsuit.
Many of the organizations that he's a member of are sponsors of our legislation, including the New Book Associations from Northern California. Many of us, I've been working on this with a small group of California booksellers since last September. Immediately our first thought was, well, we've got to get this thing repealed. We spoke with countless legislators and their staffs, and there was actually absolutely no traction for getting that done because, although it was a poorly written law, its intentions were noble. I mean, consumer protections are something that we can't argue with. Once we saw that repeal was not an option, we started getting to work on, trying to amend it to make sense so it wasn't so anti-business and wasn't so anti-bookseller. And we feel like we've come up with a solution here. And judging by how it has passed through the assembly in the past few weeks, it seems like something that Sacramento and our leadership there is happy with as well.
That seems to put the lie to Ms. Gilliam's concern that the legislature would yank up all the marbles and go home because a lawsuit got filed. And given that your initial position was that the law should be repealed, if somebody files suit to strike it down on constitutional grounds, isn't that a good thing, just approached from a different route?
In general, yes, but the Pacific Legal Foundation is not interested in helping booksellers per se. They have their own political agenda that has nothing to do with this law. They're trying to create case law to rein in the legislative powers in Sacramento to legislate business. So on the one hand, I do agree with that initial preface, but on the other hand, you have to see who you're getting in bed with. I think at the end of the day, working through this this legislative effort, I think Sacramento now has a better understanding of the book trade. I mean, I'm making my third trip in less than a month to Sacramento next week, getting to know my elected officials really well. That was the initial problem with 1570. None of the stakeholders were involved in the conversation. And I think we've really changed that paradigm in Sacramento now, which is a good thing. I think there's a better appreciation of what we do, and the fact that we're, by and large, all small business people scratching out a healthy middle-class living doing something we love.
Exactly.
Well, that seems to come around to Mr. Kurtz's concern that all litigation is a crapshoot and that's just going to be tied up for long years in court, when in fact, isn't it true that what Book Passage is seeking is injunctive relief, which is a fast track based on the federal judge determining that they have a substantial likelihood of prevailing on the merits, which gets them to essentially where you want to be.
The law might be set aside initially in the short term, but that lawsuit will take years. Well, it's not a I mean, that it can go on for quite some time.
Well, I only speak from the benefit of having practiced in federal court for a while, but generally, as I understand it, and this injunctive relief is alleging an immediate and irreparable harm, so that fast tracks an initial decision, and then the case has to move on relatively quickly in order to resolve the ultimate issue, because if you're dealing with irreparable harms, then either way it goes, somebody's going to be losing out. And in the meantime, if things go as swimmingly as it sounds like they're going in the legislature, then if the law passes and everybody's happy with it, the Attorney General can come in and say the issue is moot, it's all been resolved by the legislature. So I
think that's the way things are heading. I don't understand why the gentleman from Book Passage decided this late in the game to file the lawsuit, because the Pacific Legal Foundation was fishing for a plaintiff back in November and December, and frankly, the AB 228 provides all the relief a new bookstore will need. The bar is raised up to $50. If he's doing a book signing, I don't understand what the motivation is, frankly.
Well, does he have to explain it to you guys?
No, he doesn't. And, we're afraid we've been committed to this process for 6 months plus now, and we're going to keep on keeping on. And I think, good Lord willing, we'll have a bill on the governor's desk in June, maybe July.
I hope you'll keep us advised as this comes along, because it sounds like you're in a foot race through the summer, because the case has been set for case management decisions on August 11th. And so the question is going to be who gets over the finish line first, and we're all going to be keen to see that.
The lawsuit is of no concern to us.
Agree.
Oh, Carol, what have you been following this? And you're a part of the circles that talk about these things. What's your perspective on all this activity?
Well, like I said on the last show with I hadn't realized some of the intricacies of this kind of dual track or duality that's been created. I think I had mentioned in the show when the attorney was on from the Pacific Law Group that, it wasn't new to most of the people who were, had any kind of a dog in the race. Is that it? No, it's skin in the game. I don't know. That I looked back at emails and saw that the first time that we even publicly as a group started having a very, legitimate and intelligent discussion was in October. So yeah, 6 months of effort, certainly not on all of our parts, but on this core group of individuals, both who stand to be most impacted and those who actually just are willing to roll their sleeves up and do all this incredibly tedious work. So I am a little biased only because I'm so, impressed with the amazing, pro bono work of the members of my, my circle and my organization. and with only good intentions to kind of stop the madness, if you will. And I don't know that the lawsuit was anything other than a similar kind of all call, which was stop the madness. But perhaps, just everybody isn't always on the same stream of communicating what is the best path, so it's kind of two bodies or two, voices doing something for the same gain. I don't know that they were ever, against each other. I don't know that that's what we're saying today, but I don't know that it's a race. As Brad, as you said, it in a way is kind of, it's kind of moot because the legislation is moving forward. That was the initial goal, as I recall from the very beginning, was something has to actually shake up the California legislation here. And I don't know that a suit will set as much precedence as an amendment, but I'm not even remotely cogent in law. It's just looking at it from the outside.
Well, that's what makes news fun, and this is a story we're going to be covering probably weekly for the rest of the summer. And I hope that all of you at ABAA will keep us posted and come back to tell us about these things as they progress, because there are, of course, a lot of affected booksellers who are not members, and probably are also interested to know about the inside story of what's going on.
Right.
So,
I just have to add, because they're doing this for, it's for every single person who, for the 21-year-old kid who's sitting in his mom's basement selling stuff on eBay to Heritage Bookshop on maybe Beverly Hills Drive. So it's absolutely for everyone. And the state's law would set precedents on a national level as well if it were not, truncated now. So yeah, it's for everybody to kind of stay alert to. So.
Well, thank you again, Brad Johnson, who's on the Board of Governors of the American Association of Antiquarian Booksellers of America. He's given up a chunk of his time on a Saturday to talk with us. We're grateful for it, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, let me remind our viewers that you're watching the Rare Book Cafe, brought to you by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair Association. We happen every Saturday at 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're also, this week, we've launched a spin-off on Thursdays at noon Eastern Time called Book Week, where, among other things, we cover breaking news stories like the AB 1570 saga. We'll certainly be following up on that in the coming week. And rejoining us here is Lee Irby, who's the author of Unreliable, a Florida author. The book is out on the streets even as we speak. And I see from your publisher that you are headed into the lion's den of AB 1570 land in June for a book signing.
Oh, I'll be there Thursday. I didn't even know that this was an issue. I'll be at West Portal, Bookshops West Portal, presumably to sign. But I don't know. Will I sign? I would love to sign. I don't. Most authors don't even. I would never even consider it memorabilia. I don't know. It's not the same thing as sitting there and signing like millions of like some of these guys do that taking advantage. But I don't know that authors do that. Maybe they do. I don't know. I just don't see I don't. I mean, it's so much fun. When I was at the last Antiquarian Book Fair in Florida, I saw these signed Don DeLillos that were fabulous because I saw how he signed, and he signed them all. He signed whoever to Bob, best ever, Don DeLillo. And I thought that was, I love that. Don't take that away from me. Don't take away signing books. Even though I think there's an interesting history behind it that I would love to know. When, I don't think that William Faulkner had a book signing. I don't think, maybe Hemingway might have, but I'm pretty sure Faulkner never sat down and signed his books. I'd like to know when did book signing even become an event?
Well, that's
a great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
One I don't know the answer to, but maybe
I don't either. I don't either. Yeah. I just think about all these book festivals that authors go to all the time, and they're everywhere. I mean, LA has a huge one. I'm going to go to one in St. Pete in November, but that's pretty recent vintage as well. I mean, the Tampa Bay Times Festival of Reading, I think this is year 25 or 30. So that at least it goes back to there. So yeah, when did authors have to go on tour? When was that and they used to go on longer tours. Now very rarely do they go, quote unquote, on tour.
I could shed some light on that. Go ahead, Lindsay.
No,
guys
you
know
were
more
shedding
than
light. Please go ahead.
I'll shed
yeah,
light.
I would
Oh,
love
okay.
to hear this. Yeah.
I'll shed light on that. Okay, let's go back to one of the biggest book fair. What is considered the biggest book fair in the country is Miami Book Fair International. They're at least 30 years old. It's before that. Go back to the 20s and 30s, though, and it wasn't vogue to ask people for signatures. So
Right.
would an author come to Macy's book department and sign books? I can't answer the question. I can pose it. But I think the answer to your question lies somewhere before Miami Book Fair started in the 30s, when it wasn't vogue to, who had the first world book tour? Let's ask Siri. Where's my phone?
Kara just had a great point on the team chat that Twain, you could argue, and I think that the point she's trying to make, and she's saying that authors would go on lecture tours, and I know this from researching my book on Poe that it was according to that Chautauqua model of let's go hear a lecture. Like Emerson was a very popular lecturer, and so people considered that the fact that you didn't have television, just going to hearing someone lecture was a form of entertainment, and authors would do it, and I'm sure that Twain would. And that Kara's bringing up some good points about signatures being popular in the Victorian period. So I think you kind of like take that lecture model and then apply it to it maybe a different kind of consumerist view. I mean, my grandmother told me never to write in books. She was a librarian. The idea that you would sign a book is still just abhorrent to me. You don't write in books, ever. Any book, even the books you own, you don't write in them. Because that was a work of art. Each book was its own separate work of art, not to be defaced. So that's kind of ingrained in me, So I was like, signing my first book was weird. It's like, you don't write in books.
Back in the 30s or so, it was not cool. It wasn't considered. I got this from a jazz historian. That's why I do quote it from time to time. It wasn't cool to go up to some of these celebrities at the time. People were always seeking autographs. But
Right.
there was a period where it wasn't considered cool to do it, is what I'm kind of paraphrasing.
Right.
And of course, until 1931, there were no book reviews or book rating lists like the New York Times
Right.
to guide people.
And it's fascinating
There
that
weren't that many bookstores either. Most big department stores had book sections.
when the publishers
So,
had their
a lot of
publishers
what
had their own bookstore. I mean, like publishers had their own bookstores in New York, right? You'd go to Scribner's, right? It was a bookstore and a publisher, and so that I think at some point the publishers kind of screwed up when they got out of the book selling business, when they cut people in. I'm sure they regret it very much now. I'm sure they could go back and do it over again. They would continue to have bookstores, own every bit of it, every bit of the content from the top to the bottom. But that's the here and there. It's Brentano's. So it's really But so that it's fascinating that when did this even become? What about the consumerist push? What was it that drove people to crave the author's signature when? No, I don't know. But like if you privately printed a book like Poe did, and so many other authors in the 19th and 18th century, you privately print the book, sell it yourself, or give it away. Maybe I suppose you would sign it. Maybe if you gave it to your friend. I don't know. I don't know that. I haven't seen any original Poe. Maybe you guys have run across them. I have not. I would love to see a first edition Edgar Allan Poe. I'm not sure. You guys.
There's a point somewhere there, I guess, in the 20th century is what it seems to be that everybody's aggregating their common knowledge towards, where you're most likely going to have, rather than a flat signed book, you're going to have an association copy, which of course has elevated value anyway. And like Steve was saying, it wasn't in vogue to walk up to somebody who had any modicum of celebrity and kind of, ask for that. Maybe if you were at a dinner party, you wouldn't have brought a book. It would be had a different kind of way of communicating, where if somebody had a nice experience with you at a summer vacation or at a dinner party and you had a good conversation about your work, they would probably, if they were this motivated, they would probably send you a copy. I mean, you see these associations where it wasn't their wife or their best friend, but it was, Grace, we had a lovely time, in the Hamptons, and sign their name. So I would say somewhere in the 30s and 40s, when self-published authors had a little bit of a sense of their own self-documentation and their own immediacy of celebrity, that they would send books because it increased their own cause, because they kind of had to be their own PR engine maybe. So I would think that the tipping point through the 20th century would be when authors had to drive their own engagement. So if you're sitting at a Barnes & Noble in a tiny little town in Iowa, you're sitting there for pretty much one reason, and that's to drive engagement as you move through the tour.
You make a good point there, that there were no bookstore chains until, of relatively recently, at least definitely the 70s, probably in the 60s, there could have been Walden and so basically in the 70s, every mall had two books. I mean, every mall in America had at least two bookstores in them.
Right, exactly. Remember the days.
Right.
This is a great thing for us all to dig in and look into, and it speaks so much to author culture and to reader culture and to the 20th century kind of framing of what I call kind of a shrouded celebrity, if you will, where you're kind of like a really, you have a lot of authors who are self-published, who are maybe big fish in their really, really small pond, and they sign like crazy. And so, what's the motivation, and is there even a hunger for that? I think the good authors a while ago knew that the scarcity of their own signature, maybe that was precious. They wanted to keep some modicum of excitement for when that next book came out, and they were not interested in, lowering themselves to, signing like a dame, all over town and giving it away for free.
Which is what you do when one of the reasons I went to New York for a signing was so I could go around to all the Barnes and Nobles and sign the stock, thinking that any signed book is going to help us sell, even though there's no personal relationship at all.
No,
it's just, I held it in my hands and signed it.
Right. I've never even got it's a really interesting dynamic. This is a whole nother show. Can you guys do another show on this?
I think about it all the time. I mean, I think about all the stuff I do all the time. I try to put everything in context. I don't, examine your life and examine life. So why am I doing this? Why am I at Barnes & Noble signing this freaking book? I don't know. I don't even know why I was doing it for sales.
One big turning point in all of this was Jacqueline Suzanne and Valley of the Dollar.
Oh, right.
Could not find a publisher for the longest time, and when she did, the publisher was not particularly keen to promote it. So her husband, who had been a TV producer, came up with the first barnstorming American book tour. And they literally looked up every bookstore in America and showed up unannounced with a Cadillac trunk full of books and collateral materials and advertising stuff. And they created their own market.
Right.
And they did it to other authors and thought leaders and people who would generate buzz. And the success of that began to feed the machine, which then helped lead to the expansion of chains, which could buy up large quantities of books. And that, of course, began to feed back into the New York Times bestseller list, which people began trying to game in order to push their book up to the top of the list as soon as it came out, kind of like the way we do movies now.
Right.
And it's just been off to the races ever since, even with the new Amazon chart system, which they say will create new categories of specificity and author types and genres that don't now exist and aren't measured. There's a couple of guys who are running a podcast about how they're trying to figure out how to write a book to game the system to come out number one on the Amazon charts as soon as it comes out, because that's all algorithm.
Hey, can you send me a copy? I love Gaming the Simpson. It seems like the next thing is you get you have to ticketed events for a signing. You get a book, you get to get in. So like a really big author like George Saunders, I know he came to Tampa. That's what it was. You went to the Tampa Theater, you got a book, but you had to buy a ticket to go see him. So it seems like we're going to another level now. This idea of author as celebrity, and I've never really bought that. I feel like it's not like, Brad Pitt is always handsome. At every movie he's in, I get it. You pay the man $30 million. He looks like Brad Pitt every time. You cannot honestly say that authors write the same book every time with the same quality. They do not. And so to turn them into celebrities is to diminish the entire artistry of novel writing, and it just sickens me, really.
We have a celebrity joining us. Edie Eisenstein is our on how hard it is not only to get a bestseller, but to get one when you have to write that small.
Oh, it's good to be here again. It's so good to see everybody. Today, I'm very, very lucky that yesterday I received my current copy of the Micro Bibliophile, which is one of my favorite publications to receive every other month. Jim Brogan does a great job on it. And in this issue, in addition to a sequel story about Stephen and I that's here on page 21, he's talking about how you house your miniature books. Now, we all know that you want a book with a dust cover. We talked about the little box that they made for the set at the University of Tampa Press, my little bag book that came in its own little bag that I showed last week. But in this particular issue, Jim Brogan came up with the old card catalogs in libraries. The drawers in the old card catalogs are for 3x5s, perfect size for miniature books. It just so happens that the first school that I ever taught in at the Archdiocese here in Miami is closing. And I was down at the school today and I spoke to the principal. What did they do with their old card catalog boxes that were in the library? They threw them out. And I am thinking that as libraries are switching to be all computerized, one of my quests will now be to go and try to find one of these old card catalog boxes to properly store and catalog my own miniature book collection. I've looked around at things that you might use, and in this article, Jim talked about having an old clock on the wall where it doesn't work anymore. You could take out the inners. You have a glass front, and then you can put shelves into it for your miniature books. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those. But I'm sure that you know the Worcester Globe cases that you see in every lawyer's office, where you have the glass tops that come down over the front of the books. I was lucky enough that Bill Poston at the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, who is in attendance every year, a good friend, and he's very, very, very talented. What he does is rebinds chapbooks. That's his specialty. And he made me a miniature Warnaker Barrister Globe bookcase that I have housed part of my collection into. When I saw him last year, I asked him if he could make me any more, and he said no, it was too hard. But I mean, I love the one that he made me as a gift, and I will, if I can empty it, I will try to show it next week.
Oh,
but people, how do you house your miniature books? You can look for little curio cabinets that have shelves of the proper height or the proper depth. Some of them have glass in the back, and so you can put them in. They have a little door that closes in the front. When I found out how much my bag book was worth last week, I immediately put it into one of my curio cabinets instead of leaving it open to the dust and grime that comes in Florida apartments. But it's wonderful. But if I could find one of those old card catalog boxes, I could see where I could start to catalog my own miniature book collection, which I have never done, and where you ask most miniature book collectors, how many books do you have? You'll usually get a very, I don't know, but when I see them, I get them. And so that's what I was going to be talking about today. And this particular month's issue has stories from different miniature book collectors of where they got their first miniature book, why they got it, and how their collections have grown. Very, very interesting stories are in this issue. I know that the editor would be happy to hear from anybody. It's $39 a year to get this, but it is very, very, very well worth it. It's well illustrated. It's a lot of love goes into it. And so that's what I was talking about. Do you have any ideas of how to store miniature books?
I
Lindsay?
don't. Although when you start talking about the card catalogs, it reminded me of two things. One is I read that the last maker of the cards themselves dropped their production line last year. And it made me think of a sad article that the novelist Nicholson Baker published in the New Yorker about 20 years ago, when the first of the big libraries started going to computerized card catalogs. And I think he was attempting to salvage the card catalog of the Chicago Central Public Library. But that would be in the New Yorker archives online, and it's a fascinating and long read of the sort they don't publish anymore. That really
Now, I
gives you
grew up having...
it gives you the history of
Sorry.
card catalogs and what he felt was being lost by their digitization.
Listen, I grew up having to learn the Dewey Decimal System. Of course, I'm older than anybody. But, I mean, we learned the Dewey Decimal System. We had to go to the card catalog. And then when you signed out a book, you had a card that went into the card catalog for where that book was if it wasn't on the shelf. And some of the signatures on those old card catalogs that maybe somebody famous or no while, maybe they signed it out and you've got a rare signature sitting there in that old card catalog in that box. And then, of course, do you need a certificate to prove the authenticity of the signature with this new California law and to prove that the person actually did sign out that book. But I know that I'm going to be on a quest to try to find one, because I'm sure they're sitting in the back of several of the old libraries collecting dust, and my school threw them out. Very sad, very sad.
Let's invite all of our viewers to drop us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com if you know where any card catalog stacks are, so that we can help Edie track one down to put her books in.
Absolutely. And if you find them, look and see if anybody famous checked one out. Checked out a book, look for the signatures. It could be a quest, and the hunt is the fun. We all know that the hunt is the fun.
Well, thank you.
So
Edie.
with that, I thank you very much. Have a very safe Memorial Day. Thanks to anybody that did service, and sadness to anybody who's had a loss because somebody did serve our country. God bless everybody.
Well, thank you, Edie, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. So let me remind our viewers, we're watching the Rare Book Cafe, and we're going to be jumping into the big idea here at the end of the show, where we all sit around the table with another plate of biscotti and chew over what's been of interest to us this week. While we're getting Steve and Kara back, let me mention that today is happy 102nd birthday to Herman Wouk, the great American novelist.
Ooh.
One of the longest-lived and most productive novelists in history. He published his first book in 1938, and his last book 2 years ago when he turned 100. He's the author of The Caine Mutiny, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize in 1951. It was turned into a stage production and a movie. It was on the bestseller list for 2 whole years. He wrote Marjorie Morningstar, about a Broadway aspirant who things didn't quite work out for, and Youngblood Hawk, the fictionalization of Thomas Wolfe's life. In the 70s, he became fabulously famous and wealthy all over again by writing War and Remembrance and The Winds of War, 2 sweeping novels about World War II that led him to be compared both favorably and unfavorably to Tolstoy. And during the 90s, he wrote a series of books about Israel and its history. So it's truly a remarkable thing that somebody at the age of 97, as he did, could write an epistolary novel about a Hollywood screenwriter in which instead of letters, most of the narrative is carried by emails. That's a man who has kept up with the times, and certainly as many fans will be delighted to know he's still up and cracking around Palm Springs. He's 102 years old today. So Steve is back, I think, or it's kind of like he's stuck in the Star Trek transporter. His name tag is here, and now, but in the course of zipping across the universe, you've changed shirts.
Let's put it this way: the door blew open, our air conditioner is about to be replaced, and I would have been shining all over the place if I didn't quickly defrock and get into my formal shirt. So it's always a pleasure to be here. There were so many things that were covered today to just kind of do some rehashing. Lee, as I've said to you before, I hope your printings with everything that you do. I would really like to have known whether those were Bookman's Price Index volumes or not on Bruce's library shelf, and if they were, why were ones missing? Why aren't they using the computer? Is my question in retrospect.
I'll report back if you want me to dig for that answer. I can be the
that's all right.
The junior reporter.
Right. And it's just
I like projects.
It's funny. I've talked with two writers today. I always say I have this novel in my heart, the first intergalactic book fair, but I have said it before, I can never get past there. What am I missing, Lee? What am I missing?
I couldn't tell you.
Audio problem.
Probably alcohol. Probably alcohol is what you're missing the most.
Okay.
Are you saying that science fiction is, as a genre, is rather unabashedly bibliophilic? So I'd be willing to bet that in someone's sci-fi narrative, there's a lot of bibliomania going on. You saying you don't,
not as overtly as John Dunning, or not used to say, like in a bibliomystery. I can't. Correct me if I'm wrong. I always say fiction is not my forte. I'm a nonfiction reader. But is there a sci-fi title that anyone's aware of where the book is the thing? Why would I want to be in an intergalactic book fair? For many reasons in reality. But where can you fantasize with that? Where can you fantasize with that to create a novel? I love the title. I just don't like. I've written 2 articles in the last 4 months for a magazine. I guess to you guys that's just like hack work.
No,
no, I don't mean no. I'm saying that was a compliment.
Oh, right.
But I've tried. I don't know what I'm missing. I keep asking, where is it? What is it in the scheme of putting it together that is just the one piece that hasn't said, okay, you got to start and go there. Maybe it's because I'm writing about something I don't know, which was the thing that. Okay, I think that was it. That was the.
Maybe not emotionally damaged enough. Maybe your mother didn't do a number on you quite enough, so that.
No, I had a happy childhood.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, there's a lot of bibliography going on there. Steve, I got it. What you're interesting is you need to pay someone else to write it, but it needs to be a confessional, and it's a horror sci-fi called Ghost in the Grimoire. So
okay.
As you move through the narrative of the book, you actually, it actually starts, that'd be more like a fantasy than sci-fi, but still. We can idea tank that later if you want.
Well, we will try that. I'm tired of talking about it as a failure. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
You need to write it as a miniature so it can be really, really short.
Okay. Ray Bradbury already did a couple of miniatures. Well, I am looking at the time, and I want to thank everybody. Lee Irby.
Thank you for having me.
Kara, a pleasure anytime. I like I say, I hope you find 21st printings and everything you do. Some of your first books are already rare. As an author, that's a great thing to have and to
Very
be
rare.
able to do and say. And rare. No, you know, and remember, the Rare Book Cafe is brought to you by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. It's 37 years next April. We hope you're all going to mark it down on your calendars because it's a great event to be at. I want to thank you all for being here. Lindsay, Thorne, Alan for putting the program together. And stay with us. You can see our archived reruns on Facebook. We are here on BeLive TV. We want to thank everybody at BeLive TV for helping us create this platform. If you have questions or looking for answers, you can reach us at the rarebookcafe@gmail.com. And we wish everybody a very healthy, happy Memorial Day. Be safe, find rare books, make the news with the sales of them, and we'll see you all next week.
Hey. You're still
So
live.
where are we going after the cafe, guys?
You're still
Where are
live,
we going
by
after
the
the
way.
cafe? What's up?
Hold on,
I know,
you're
we're
still
supposed to. I want to know what we're doing after the cafe. That's what I
Yeah,
want
where's
to
the
know.
post game?
So,
You are
yeah,
still
okay.
live, by the way.
I know.
Right?
We'll talk about that on Monday, whether it should or shouldn't. You know. Anyway, thanks for joining us, folks.